Hi, this is Shannon with imatterwellness.ca, and I am back to do another example correction. I have with me today Michele. Michele, I've known for a few years now. Hi, Michele.
Hi.
Don't be shy.
I won't.
Michele is gonna demonstrate one of the more advanced corrections for us today. And she's actually done a few of these in the past, so she kind of knows what she's doing with them. And it's called the psychological word string. Psychological word strings. And what the word strings are is, I'm going to give her a group of words, and she's going to resonate them and think about what it means to her and how it applies to her life. Right, Michele?
Yes.
So
I will do that.
as she does it, we're going to do one word at a time, and at the very end I'm going to check them all to make sure they're good, and then we'll turn it over to Michele to give us some thoughts after. So are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we're going to start with normalizing. 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 The next word is prospective. So it could be like a prospective job or a prospective event.
Okay.
Prospective. prospective. Okay, the last word in this group is rounded. R-O-U-N-D-E-D. Kind of like a person's well-rounded. Apply that to you, see what it means.
Okay.
Rounded.
Yes.
Rounded. Okay, that takes care of the full correction. On some level, those will be all connected for Michele. So they may not seem like they're related in any way, but for some reason they're all connected or all related on some level for Michele. So now that you're regrouping, do you have any thoughts on?
Well, for myself, I think those words are very relevant to to this date for me. Um, Normalizing. When it says that normalizing is bringing to back to a standard, for me, it's a grounded state.
Okay.
Because if I become involved in too much of social media or just everything that's going on around us, I'm finding I'm not staying focused on the relevant for things that still need to be done in a daily sense, right? And you can get so wound up and caught up in some of the emotional stuff, right?
Totally,
Of
totally.
what's going on in the world.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I do my best to stay. It's not that I don't have a personal opinion, but I need to respond to things, and that's what I'm working on, is trying to be logical rather than emotional about everything.
And step
And that
back
helps.
from what?
I'm sorry.
And probably step back a little bit from what?
Yeah, and really think, because I do have a tendency, that personality, whether it's through DNA or
Mhm.
things in the past, to be very vocal and sometimes not thinking about how I address things
Yeah.
can be offensive, right, to people, and I don't want to offend people. Um, and I need to pull myself out of the box and think about if I was in that situation, right?
Right.
Looking at things from a different perspective, how I would deal with things or how my opinion might change.
Mhm.
Um, and then perspective. How do I feel about that? Well, no matter how much certain things are said, that with everything going on again, that we're only going to be in this for a short time, I'm trying to be logical again, to say this can go on and on and on for not just weeks yet, but months. And I'm hearing people of different backgrounds who are not religious, not whatever, who don't have maybe a hope for future things, events, but they are still using common sense and saying this is not going to go away overnight. So how do we cope and deal with it, right? But they're not in denial of where we're going to be by September, that, oh, everything is going to be. At one point, people thought it was just a very short
Yeah.
transition and things will be back to normal. So,
Sounding like it's not going to be. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then being rounded, well, then again, that brings me back to, those words are very, connected for me. I cannot become, right now, I'm being like some people and saying, okay, take this free time that you have, not just to sit and watch Netflix movies, but to get my life more organized in order, to not get distracted, again, caught up with social media and other distractions, right? But not to live also in denial of what the reality of what is going on out there. Rounded for me just means being grounded.
Mhm.
Um, when
Mhm.
that word was coming to mind, I'm looking out this window and I'm seeing the clouds, and I'm actually, I think, hearing the pelicans. Something's honking. I don't know if a pelican honks on the river or not,
I don't know.
but I'm also hearing the robins outside, because the sky's not clear, but we did have a couple breaks because it's been pouring rain for hours and hours.
Oh yeah.
And then I look down, I'm thinking I can hear grunting and groaning, and that's the pups are having a nap in the first basket they came home in
Oh yeah.
2 years ago, because they have little beds all over here and there to keep them
Oh
comfy. They want to be near you, right? So,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm sorry. So back to rounded. So remaining balanced, and means with my emotions too. not getting caught up with distractions, trying to focus on relevant things, not
That's a
being
good
in denial.
example.
Pardon me?
That was a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just like smelling the fresh air and just being, I guess, focused on being grateful for daily things
Yeah.
that we've taken for granted for years, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, things that are relevant, focusing on what to be grateful for, but also by my actions showing that I'm not taking things for granted either, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you did a really good job of tying all three of those words together.
Oh, okay. Well, I jot little notes too, and that kind of keeps me from diving
Yeah.
around,
Well,
jumping around.
I would have never connected all of that together when I first figured out the words for you. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope it makes sense to, it does make sense to me, but hopefully it
Yeah, no,
makes,
yeah,
yeah.
you explained that very well, actually. That's good. Yeah, I wasn't actually expecting that good a explanation to it, but that was super
Oh,
good.
well, I have a tendency to have run-on sentences, just speak spontaneously. So once in a
You
while,
always
everything
make really good
connects.
points. You always make
Yeah,
good points. Yeah, yeah.
thank you.
So moving on, I said I was going to ask you a question about you've worked a little bit with natural bioenergetics with not just myself, but your sister and also with Dr. Scott.
Yes.
And what have you found natural bioenergetics has done for you in the past?
Well, I have a lot of respect for the healthcare system, but I also realize there's so many sciences that are discovering different things about how our emotional is connected with our physical and the physiology of our body and
Mhm.
transfer of energy. And, um, a lot of scientists or people who study galaxies, it's very, very complicated, very complex, right?
Mhm.
Um, So I found that being open-minded enough, having a couple situations, one which you're aware of, and I was just explaining this to another person, until I dealt with things and some of the word strings, but also allowing myself to become open enough to allow energy to be transferred, thinking of these thoughts, sometimes having little, I don't know what you call them, Shannon, when you give me a, like homework to do.
Mhm.
Some of it may seem like it's a little off the wall, but some of the homework that was given to me in the past, I'll just give you, it was just very, very short.
Mhm.
Um, Twice a day, certain times, had to have running water flowing and had to be able to look in the mirror and just, I'm trying to remember, this is like 3 years ago, touch
We don't
certain
even remember
points.
what it was.
No, I remember the condition. And now I feel for people because I never have ever had any kind of, always had the kind of skin that tanned and just never had reaction to sun, never had reaction to food. But I honestly didn't realize that I had what would be almost like emotional blockage,
Okay.
like being in denial of certain emotions I was going through and trying to hold everything in and not being able to release. Or so I had emotional channels, I believe, that were blocked. And until they became open, I practiced my little sessions that were given to me and the homework, just like you have given me in the past.
Mhm.
That truly, within 48 hours, I went from being, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but truly, I'm being honest here. I went from feeling very helpless and hopeless and being told that I had a skin condition that was incurable.
Uh-huh.
So I did have relief within 48 hours. I still have skin damage. I've lost some, well,
Yeah.
I'm at the where you don't have the collagen production that, it slows down with age. But I had so much damage that, I wouldn't, the itching, the psychological way that I felt, um, in a few instances, I had to take painkillers to be able to
I
get
remember.
through
Yeah.
20 minutes or an hour 4 hours, and I was feeling very hopeless. And then that's when I did reach out for bioenergetics. And at that state, I thought, you know what? And it's like I was told by someone else, what have you got to lose? And I thought,
Yeah.
I have to have, yeah. So I was very open-minded at
Mhm.
that point to just like, please, if something or somehow, some way can help me, then yeah.
Well, and often
But when,
when
I'm
we
sorry?
figure out stuff like that, we have no idea what it's doing, you know.
No,
Figure out-
no. And some of the little exercise too did take me back to childhood.
Yeah,
And you think you're okay because you're healing and you've come a long ways and you've learned how to communicate and you've learned how to cope with certain emotions. You feel, oh, and part of the testing too that came back was I was 73% of it was stress related.
yeah, yeah. I think I remember something like that with you. Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
like I do know that, and how a lot of us has figured out, just as a little bit of background information, is we do muscle monitoring, formerly called muscle testing, and we figure it all out, and then we have no idea what it is. In fact, this is a beautiful technique because no, Michele doesn't have to tell me what those emotional things are. You know, she needs to talk about it on here, but she doesn't have to. She just doesn't have to tell me about it. I figure it out. She applies it to herself. And like she said, it brought her back to her childhood, right? So
Yes,
I have no idea until she actually tells me this, right?
yes.
So
What's amazing, and now scientifically, like they say, DNA is, passed on
yeah.
through generations. So whether you want to be, I always look at the genetics or the emotional traits of my mother and my father, and there were some really good traits, and then there's stuff, I found out through grandparents,
Mhm.
and they came over from Ireland and England, like some horrific things that they faced as children too, and you don't realize, why am I, you know, um, yeah, hot-headed at times. Why am I? Where are all these things coming from? Because I don't like being that kind of
Yeah.
person. So the bioenergetics has helped me to actually understand myself better, but also to be able to cope with those stress factors that will help me to be able to control, right?
Yeah. And a lot of what
Those,
Michelle's talking about right now is there's been studies done where they've taken mice and they've exposed the male mice or rat or whatever to um, shock or whatever in a maze, taken them out of that maze, brought them to a female, taken them away from the female, and the offspring were never in contact with the male. But when they put them into when they put them into that maze, they had the same fear. They didn't know why, and yet the mother didn't have that fear. So what she's talking about is some trauma that may have been passed down through DNA that she doesn't know where it came from because it wasn't in her life. But and sometimes we can unearth that a little bit. It's actually very scientific.
yeah, it's hard to believe. And that's why you wonder, like, why is there this pattern, right?
Yeah,
I mean, some of it is human nature. We all are born, I believe, with a conscience. It's the way we were created. But it's just that why do how one person perceives trauma at a certain age with their personality and their background, whatever it is, the other person, it registers totally different, or they can adjust to it or adapt, or what's the word? They just deal with it differently.
mm-hmm.
In the old days, we used to say, "Oh, come on, suck it up." Well, I truly didn't have that empathy. I did always had empathy for little people and helpless and street people, and you'd watch these, but you really didn't understand. I think, "Oh, come on, get over it," or
Yeah.
we would just, yeah, and just deal with it. But you just didn't realize how one person at 6 years of age could be a sibling to another at 12 or 10, but you're processing it differently. And sometimes you will totally block it out. People used to think you had to have physical brain damage, but trauma can cause brain damage and disconnect certain receptors, right?
Well, it's also
All those
it's
things.
got epigenetics, right? Whereas you're a product of your environment, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for some people, that environment can be so void of natural human affection and everything else, that their main goal is just survival.
Mhm.
Survival at whatever cost, right? And you think, well, how could they do these things, or how could they, be
Yeah.
thinking like that? But wow, they've been conditioned maybe that they didn't have food, or that they didn't have, certain things at certain ages, where if you provide that love and security. And
Yeah.
anyway, I'll quit talking here, Shannon.
No, that was
So no,
actually
and another thing, I'm sorry. So another thing that really helps me. So if I was feeling wound up and I had booked a session with you and I just felt like, oh, I just want to cop out. I just want to go and, just veg out on the couch, or just had a really good meal. I'm feeling full and had a hard day at work or something. But I will tell you, every time I do have a session, that I come out of it feeling so much more grounded. I have more clarity. Um, and I feel rejuvenated.
good, good.
Not just emotionally, but even physically. Yeah.
That's
It's
awesome.
like the full moon was, right here, pulling, gravitational pull, and giving, not quite, but yeah. Yeah, no, I feel great. So
Wow, that's fabulous.
yes. So I do
Sometimes
appreciate.
it's strange that I don't hear all this until I do a video interview like this, but it's
Oh,
awesome to hear this.
yeah, I give you credit, because I can't, you have always been very helpful, and just, so I mean, I do give you credit, and that's why I don't want you to think that I take that for
Yeah,
granted either. But helping people is the ultimate goal, right? When you know that
yeah,
what you are doing is helping. And I mean,
what you know, and sharing so that people can learn things and apply it to their what they need to pull out of it to their lives, right? So,
right, exactly.
I mean,
Yes,
my experience is different than yours, but there might be something that I've experienced that you can pull out of it, and likewise with you, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
So, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Hmm.
Well, this was an example of a correction that can be done in natural bioenergetics. And corrections can take different forms. This was just one of them. I would say many of them are psychological in nature, thought based, or like a repeated phrase or a thought where you have to think about something. It can be, or something you have to generate a feeling or whatever. Many of them can be set up like that. Others can be set up like a physical situation, or we may have to reenact something, or just variations of that, or it could be a touch response to something, or a smell, or whatever. There's just so many combinations of corrections that can be done. Now, any session, I would say 99% of the time would be more than one correction, anywhere from one to several. I've had some that have had to go more than 5 corrections in a session. I've had some that are only 1 or 2. It just depends on what the patient or what the client needs to do at that point in time. Now, they may take a few minutes to process. They may take several weeks to process. Everyone's an individual. So I hope that gives you an idea of what to expect in natural bioenergetics, and I hope that we're going to, with a few more examples, I hope you get a better idea of what natural bioenergetics is all about. Have a great day. Thanks.